Amanda took an unusual route home, arriving progressively later, first by 15 minutes, then by 25. She began phoning with a voice typically reserved for situations where one is already in questionable places. According to her GPS was malfunctioning, and traffic was unbelievably congested, even on Sundays when the roads were generally deserted like an abandoned film set. However, the truth has a tendency to emerge, and that evening it seeped through the silence. I had just finished a long day at the shop, still carrying the aroma of metal and oil, my hands raw and rough from work. I decided to pick up her favorite pasta from the little Italian place on 5th for what was meant to be an uncomplicated evening. Dinner, perhaps a movie, a moment of relief amidst the stress. But when I arrived home, it was unusually quiet, disconcertingly quiet. The lights were off, no music playing, and there was no scent of perfume in the air. 32 minutes delayed, she entered, her makeup meticulously done for a yoga class, hair styled elegantly. Her footwear was high heels, an odd choice for a workout session. My gaze shifted from her shoes to her. She paused mid-step at the door, resembling a child caught past curfew. "You're back early," she commented, her eyes darting. "Actually, you're late," I retorted. This was when the false smile appeared, the kind she donned while concocting tales in her mind. Amanda always possessed that ability. She could lie convincingly, maintaining an air of tranquility, as if reading weather forecasts. Her tale was traffic, a familiar excuse she'd already used thrice this week. I remained silent, refraining from questioning. Instead, I moved past her, discarded the food bag onto the table, and took my seat without another word. However, she couldn't endure the quietness. Dear friends, if you enjoy this story, please like and subscribe to our channel. It will motivate us to make more videos like this for you. She stood behind me with folded arms, nervously swaying. Deceitful whispers seemed to bubble in her throat, aligning like chess pieces. Instead of speaking, she departed, vanishing into the bathroom, locking the door and leaving her phone on the kitchen counter. I'm not proud of my subsequent actions. I scrutinized that phone as if it was a time bomb. It might as well have been. There was an aura around it that felt forbidden, necessary, but also radioactive. I didn't need to spy. I didn't want to, but a voice within me suggested that this was the moment, the boundary between what I presumed and what I knew. So I picked it up. No password required. That took me aback. Or maybe it didn't. Perhaps she wanted to be discovered. Her texts were spotless, excessively so. All recent messages had been erased. I inspected her photos. They were barren apart from a few old selfies and screenshots. It was as though I had walked into a burglarized home, every drawer left open and emptied. But she made one error. 2 messages remained in her deleted folder, unattended. Upon opening it, the first image depicted an unfamiliar woman in a black gown, with lips slightly parted and eyes half closed as if anticipating a photographer. The second message read, "Last night was wild. I can still taste you." My stomach churned. I set down the phone carefully, fearing it might break. I remained seated in the kitchen, contemplating the untouched pasta while awaiting her emergence. Amanda, being a woman who played chess-like games, anticipated 4 steps ahead, but didn't consider me deviating from the rules. She emerged from the bathroom donning one of my old sweatshirts. Amanda often did this to convey innocence, slipping on something that bore my scent, an oversized and worn piece that whispered, "See? I still belong to you." However, I had grown weary of her costume changes. Upon seeing her, she offered a look, partly intrigued, partly annoyed. "Didn't you eat?" she inquired, gesturing towards the pasta. I remained silent. "Eric," she repeated, her voice slightly more deliberate, a hint of sharpness creeping into it. "What's the matter?" I rose calmly and moved towards the counter to grab her phone. I carried it over to the table and placed it between us, as if presenting proof in court. "You forgot to clear the trash folder," I stated. Her expression didn't alter immediately. It was a slight twitch of the jaw, an extended blink, a sudden halt in her breath. But her voice remained calm like polished glass. "Why are you snooping through my phone?" she countered, turning the question back on me. This was her tactic. Switch roles. Make me appear to be the wrongdoer. I didn't flinch because over the past 2 months, I had watched you tell lies with a straight face, and I needed proof to stop questioning myself. Amanda looked at the phone, then at me. She simply said it's complex, just like that. She spoke as if discussing taxes or printer repair. Flatly, I responded, "It's not that." Not anymore. A pause filled the air, a potentially destructive silence where what came next could shatter forever. And then she did what she often did. She sighed and rolled her eyes. God, Eric, she said, it was only once. It didn't mean anything. That was the first lie. Then who is he? I inquired. When and where did it happen? She crossed her arms. Do you really want to know all the details now? Do you wish to torment yourself with them? I remained silent, only gazing at her. Not her body, not her lips, not her sweatshirt. I merely looked at her. The woman who'd been by my side at my father's funeral, who wept when we couldn't conceive. Now she had turned betrayal into a casual shrug and sigh. She eventually sat down, picked up the fork, took a bite of pasta as if this were just an ordinary Tuesday. You always overreact so much, she mumbled, with her mouth full. I looked at her, and within me, a fissure formed, not like a snap of a bone, but as if a dam was bursting silently under strain. No sound, just an awareness that an outpouring was imminent, and I couldn't stem it. You slept with someone else, I murmured quietly. Yet here you are, enjoying dinner as if everything is normal. Amanda raised her eyes, chewing more slowly now. You've lost your allure, Eric. I had to voice it. You're routine-bound, secure, dull. There it was, the second deception hidden in a truth, the kind that hurts more because it may contain a grain of truth. I left, not out of feeble-mindedness, but because I could feel the heat rising within me. I needed fresh air, freedom, something other than her voice, her cutlery clinking against the dish, her lack of concern. She didn't pursue me immediately, not until I opened the front door and stood there, one foot on the porch, one still inside. Where are you headed? She inquired at last. I admitted, no, I don't know. It was truthful. However, I knew I wouldn't remain here, not under these circumstances, and with someone who could deceive even with a mouthful of food without cleaning her lips. That night, I opted to sleep in the car, foregoing any attempts at comfort. The seat reclined, and I gazed at the roof, hoping for some insight. My phone vibrated twice. First, it was my buddy Noah asking if I was still planning to attend the weekend poker game, then a message from Amanda, just a picture of our dog Max snuggled on our bed accompanied by, "He misses you." It was manipulative sentiment cloaked in puppy eyes. That was classic Amanda. I chose not to respond. At around 2:30 a.m., I noticed the bedroom light switch off. A silhouette moved across the window, hers. I visualized her brushing her teeth, discarding my sweatshirt for a delicate nothing, and sliding into bed as if it were just another ordinary night. For her, perhaps it was. By dawn, I remained sleepless. My neck ached, my jaw was tight, and I felt as if I hadn't blinked for hours. I eventually retrieved my keys and drove to the only place I knew would be vacant at that hour, my workshop. The shop was chilly, gritty, serene. I activated the lights, pushed up the sleeves of my coat, and began repairing things. Anything. An antique carburetor, a warped axle, a corroded jack. My hands functioned on autopilot. My mind craved sound, tools clattering, metal scraping, something tangible. Around 10 a.m., Noah arrived. He didn't knock, merely strolled in as usual, coffee in one hand, donut in the other. "You look dreadful," he commented, tossing me the donut. I accepted it and remained silent. He paused for a moment, then asked, "Is it about Amanda?" That was the instant. That was when I understood it wasn't just my intuition that was aware. It was in the atmosphere, in the crevices, in the way she had distanced herself from our acquaintances, too, the way Melissa had stopped posting her pictures online, in a manner similar to when Jake casually inquired, "Hey, everything okay with you, buddy?" Feigning interest in football scores, I responded with a nod. "Yes," I replied. "It's about Amanda." And so I shared the texts, the photo, her tone that single time, the way she consumed pasta as if it were my fault. Noah remained silent throughout, simply allowing me to speak. Then he uttered something profound. "You understand," he said, "that a person might apologize 1,000 times. But when they reveal their true selves, that's the real apology." After exiting the workshop around midday, I returned home to find Amanda in the same spot in the kitchen as before, a different day. She seemed unaware of the fact that she had shattered our lives just hours earlier. "There you are," she said, implying I'd lost my way to the mailbox. I stood in the doorway, keys still clutched in my hand. I'd gone to the workshop. Did you repair anything? She asked, as if that was significant. Yes, I replied. I repaired everything except this. She gently placed her cup aside. Are we repeating this, aren't we? She queried. No, I replied. This is our final act. Her jaw stiffened. Eric, you know it held no significance. I inhaled deeply, the kind of breath one takes when teetering on the brink of something monumental. Not a precipice or a building, but a life that must cease to make room for another to bloom. I trust your words, I said. It had no importance to you, so what's the issue? She remained silent, refraining from debate, simply folding her arms and averting her gaze, as if I'd sullied her day. It was then I understood that this wasn't about salvaging what was broken. It was about departing before I morphed into a stranger to myself. I packed my belongings without uttering another word. The scene lacked theatrics. No luggage hurled down the stairs, no smashed picture frames, just the soft sounds of drawers opening and closing, zipping bags, and the muted thuds of shoes hitting the duffel bag. In the hallway, Amanda stood rigidly, her arms crossed as if overseeing a maintenance worker rather than witnessing her husband depart from their union. She murmured under her breath, "You're being so melodramatic," as I walked past her, snatching a coat from the rack. I halted, gazed at her, and then it struck me. She hadn't shed a tear. Not during the argument, not during the quiet spell, nor now as I stood in the doorway with a substantial portion of my life in a gym bag. She had already departed emotionally, long before. I'm not being melodramatic, I stated. I'm done, she sneered. Are you trying to suggest that exiting makes you some sort of hero? No, I replied. It makes me someone who at last comprehends that cherishing you and forfeiting myself aren't the same thing. Amanda's countenance did not soften. Instead, it grew harder. You're not the only one with requirements, Eric. Perhaps if you had been present more. There it was, I interjected. The blame game. Punctually on cue. She shrugged and walked off, heading to the kitchen as if the discussion was no longer interesting. I remained there, hand on the knob, staring at the back of her head, pondering how many times she had deceived me with that exact pose. Composed, unfazed, distant, and how many times I had fallen for it. I spotted the photo. Amanda, I said in a quiet voice, alongside the message, I can still taste you. That wasn't an isolated incident. That was habit. She didn't react. Do you want to know the most distressing aspect? I asked. It's not even that you were unfaithful. It's that when you got discovered, you didn't seem to care. At last, she faced me. For the first time, she had no words. Her mouth gaped, then shut. Her face did not contort with regret. Instead, it simply sagged, without expression, as if the part of her that should have been affected had already migrated to another person's bed. I opened the door. Tell your secret lover he is one, I said. However, he didn't just take your body, he inherited your mess. The door closed gently, decisively behind me. I didn't stray far. Just a few blocks led me to Noah's residence. He offered an unused room, a fridge filled with beer, and a tranquility that didn't require words. Dropping my bag in the spare room, I perched on the bed's edge. Then it struck me, not the fury or sorrow, but the heaviness. The overwhelming sensation of realizing that the person I had confided in completely, my secrets, my dreams, my future, had deliberately chosen someone else over me. It felt like mourning a spirit that was still among us. I lay down and fixated on the ceiling for a considerable duration, picking up the air vent's hum, a neighbor's dog's occasional bark, and the rhythmic throb in my chest that echoed one truth. This wasn't transient. It marked the start of something novel, and the end of what I had once thought was eternal. The first night away was devoid of feeling. The second was more painful. By the third, I had committed every flaw in Noah's ceiling to memory. Each evening, he abstained from queries, refrained from intruding, instead offering a beer, and switching on the game as if we were back in college, oblivious to the chasm that had recently torn our world apart. I found his quiet understanding more valuable than words could express. He seemed to realize that tranquility was preferable to empathy. However, messages began pouring in. First from Amanda. Naturally, it was Amanda. I believe we need to discuss this. I didn't intend to hurt you. Can we behave maturely about this? You can't simply disappear without resolution. Then came Melissa's message. Melissa, I don't wish to take sides, but I heard about what happened. Are you all right? Jake chimed in next. Jake, it seems some of the group believe you overreacted. That was a hard blow, because there it was, the beginning of the campaign. Amanda wasn't merely fabricating stories in private. She was laying the foundation. I remained silent, not responding to any of her messages, not even to point out how ludicrous her last message was. For the first time, I couldn't provide her with the thread to reweave her life. Then Melissa texted again. Melissa, hey, I don't want to take sides, but I heard what happened. Are you okay? Repainting the canvas, portraying myself as the unrecognized spouse of a man on the verge of breakdown. I didn't react to Jake either. That is, until I received her unexpected message. It came from Lauren. She and Amanda were colleagues, not particularly close friends, but they shared the occasional dinner as couples before their separation last year. Her message was brief, simply, Lauren, a follow-up. Just so you know, I saw Amanda with him. Not once, not twice. It's been ongoing for some time. You weren't imagining it. There it was, the unasked-for confirmation that I needed. I fixated on the screen for a long while. I yearned to inquire about him. I craved details. Instead, I merely responded, "Thank you." And that was all there was. The fog began to dissipate, ever so slightly, clear enough to think rationally. Amanda was not remorseful. She had been unmasked. She wasn't inconsolable. She was trapped. After recognizing that she couldn't manipulate me with a dog photo or insincere apologies, she rewrote her side of the story to make herself feel less insignificant. But truth doesn't cater to your adjustments. It merely waits. A few nights later, I found myself seated next to Noah on the porch. He was partially asleep in the chair beside me. The night air was refreshing, the neighborhood peaceful. My phone illuminated once more. Another message from Amanda. Amanda, I read Lauren's message. You really going to trust her account over your own wife? This made me genuinely laugh. Laugh out loud. That moment marked when I realized I wasn't simply enduring this. I was healing. Not rapidly, not neatly, but I was no longer under her control. No longer caught in a cycle of ifs, if she'd change, if we could fix it, if I was the issue. No, she was the issue. Her deceit was the decay, and I had ceased nurturing the dying plant. Healing is not usually straightforward, and it seldom announces itself. For me, it began with laundry. 2 weeks post leaving Amanda, I washed my own clothes at Noah's place for the first time. Neatly stacked, detergent on top, I initiated it. As I stood there, listening to the monotonous whir of the ancient washer, an unusual event transpired. Not a single thought about her crossed my mind. No recollection of the affair, the messages, or insincere apologies. Just laundry, reclaiming the mundane routines of life without a deceiver's presence. That was progress. The shop seemed altered too. I extended my work hours and focused on repairs. I undertook restoring an old Mustang that had been stationary in our lot for months, finding symbolism in its revival. Rebirthing something that had been left behind felt poetic. On a Thursday, while engrossed in the car's engine, I heard the familiar click-clack of high heels on concrete. I recognized the sound. She always walked with an air of performance for an invisible camera. Sluggishly, I rose and brushed my hands on a cloth before her appearance became apparent. Amanda, clad in black jeans and a fitted top, her hair meticulously curled, as if prepared for a confrontation rehearsed in front of the mirror. This seemed to be the climax of a play she still believed she directed. You'd assumed I'd remain, I acknowledged. Indeed, I reside here, primarily. She offered a smile that wasn't genuine. It was more of a jest. Nevertheless, it wasn't. I desired conversation, not through messages or via Lauren. Discarding the cloth onto the workbench, I folded my arms. So let's converse, then. Encroaching nearer, she stepped. Too near, as if distance could expunge recollections. I've been contemplating a lot, she admitted. About everything. About us. My brow arched in query. Us? She exhaled heavily, as though I was taxing her energy. It seemed burdensome for her. I acknowledge my blunder. I'm not denying it. Yet, I don't believe we should squander years over a single error. A single error. Almost respectfully, I observed her dedication to the script. Is that what we're labeling it now? Inquired I. One mistake? You sharing hotel photos with a man whose identity you conceal? She subtly glanced away, but only momentarily. She declared it as unimportant, yet her actions of concealment suggested otherwise, lasting for months. Her voice remained calm, but the weight of her lies was evident. Amanda bit her lip, her default response when words failed her. "I just miss you," she murmured. I remained silent. She moved closer once more, almost touching my forearm. She yearned for us, and perhaps that might have worked on the old me, the hopeful man. But not anymore. I took a step back and replied, "You don't miss me. You miss the man who tolerated you." Her hand fell as her grip weakened. "You can't miss what you chose to bury," I stated. For the first time, she was left speechless, without a rebuttal or a justification. I wiped my hands again and turned back to the Mustang, adding, "I am no longer angry." That's the key difference. Amanda didn't respond. Later, I heard her heels clicking away more hastily. She neither slammed the door nor cried. She merely departed. No slam, no tears, just gone. I chose not to observe her departure. Instead, I gazed at the engine, a tangle of bolts and belts, and whispered softly, "Let's get you functioning again." Peace doesn't arrive suddenly. It seeps in gently, timidly, as if fearing it might not be accepted. The first instance I became aware of this was when I found myself humming absent-mindedly while replacing brake pads. No familiar melody, just an improvised tune my mouth created without conscious thought. No thought behind it, no significance attached. That's how I recognized I hadn't thought of Amanda the entire day. Yet that tranquility didn't endure long. A week following Amanda's unexpected visit to the garage, I received an email. Not a text, not a call, an email. The subject line read, "A few things you should know." From Cameron Reynolds, a name unknown to me until that moment. As soon as I opened the message, a chill ran through my entire being. "Eric, I am not acquainted with you personally, yet I supposedly knew your spouse. However, my assumptions about her have now been shattered. My name is Cam. For some time I have been seeing Amanda. She had informed me that you two were separated and that the divorce paperwork was in progress, stating that you had moved out a considerable period ago, effectively ending things between you two. I trusted her narrative. Unfortunately, my trust was misplaced, as I discovered last week when she confronted me for messaging her during a difficult predicament of hers. I did not intend to intrude upon your marriage, and I am not proud of it. Nevertheless, you have the right to know all the facts. She conveyed to me that you were domineering, unsupportive of her aspirations, and made her feel insignificant. The image she painted was vivid, and I fell for it. However, her actions since then, including deceit, imply that she is playing both sides. She confessed her affection for me the same week she appeared at your store. If I were you, I would flee. Swiftly. Let me express my apologies for the predicament you find yourself in. I believe I am finally emerging from the same deception you have been trapped within. Cam. I gazed at the screen for so long that the letters became indistinct. Amanda didn't merely deceive, she crafted an alternative universe. A mirror world where I was the antagonist and she, the lost, misinterpreted heroine. At first, I felt nothing. No anger, no shock, just a peculiar, quiet sorrow, like perusing photographs of a charred house, recalling the affection for the living room before it turned into ashes. I didn't respond to Cam. What was there to say? He too had been manipulated, perhaps more so than me. He was still at the crash site, removing shards from his flesh. That evening I sat on the porch once more, beer in hand, gazing at the stars. Noah emerged and joined me, saying nothing. He could now decipher my silence. After a prolonged pause, I spoke. She informed him we were separated. He nodded slowly. "Are you going to confront her?" "No," I replied. "I've already done that. She operates in deception, not truth." Noah drank, then softly laughed. "Why so serious?" "You," he replied. "You seem less burdened." It felt strange. Perhaps it wasn't the betrayal that signaled the end of our relationship, but the realization that Amanda didn't only deceive me, she deceived herself, repeatedly. Now, all that remained were charred bridges and two men who had finally recognized the smoke for what it truly was. The next morning, I blocked Amanda's number, deleted our photos, unfollowed her, and removed her from my phone as if banishing a specter. For the first time in months, I didn't feel hollow afterward. Instead, I felt liberated. 2 months passed, and my life became less tumultuous. No more late-night arguments about trivial matters. No more questioning who she was texting. No more tiptoeing around unpredictable mood swings. It was as if someone had silenced the static in my mind, allowing me to think clearly once again. And with this newfound quietness came an unexpected emotion: curiosity. Who was I before becoming Amanda? Before the excuses, the compromises, the gradual fading of my identity? I used to strum the guitar. I used to fish with my sibling. I used to immerse myself in real books. I used to find humor in the trivial without seeking validation from others. So I began reclaiming fragments of myself. I retrieved my old guitar from the attic at my parents' home. The strings were corroded, the body dusty, yet it still fit comfortably in my hands. It seemed as if it had been waiting for me to return. I registered for a fishing excursion over the weekend with my brother Thomas. We hadn't shared more than a meal together in years, not since Amanda implied that he was beneath our lifestyle standards. Ironically enough, given what she ultimately became. The trip was tranquil, simply a boat, some brews, and expansive waters. However, at one point, Thomas glanced at me and remarked, "You're smiling more." Unbeknownst to me, I was. Then came the surprise. A package arrived at the store without an address. Inside was a gift that rekindled forgotten parts of myself. Named Amanda, the letter bore neat script, tightly sealed. With a mix of anticipation and apprehension, I opened it, unsure if it was a trick or a dramatic finale. The contents were an envelope. Within it, a handwritten note saying, "Eric, this will be our last contact. No requests are made. I merely wish to inform you that I'm leaving the city. I've secured a job out of state and am embarking on a new beginning. You may not care, but I felt compelled to tell you regardless. You were a good man, simply not the one for me." Or perhaps it was vice versa. "There will be no more attempts to contact you, no excuses. All I hope is that at some point you'll recall the positive moments and erase the negative ones. Farewell. Amanda." The letter bore no return address or phone number, just those words. And there I sat, rereading it multiple times, waiting for emotions to surface. Yet, I felt nothing, neither anger nor nostalgia nor regret, just a sense of finality. Her departure wasn't a tempestuous scene. It wasn't tears or another manipulation tactic. Instead, it was a subtle retreat from my life. It struck me then that the harm she inflicted no longer held sway over me. I was no longer burdened by her decisions, as if they were an additional layer of skin. I felt lighter, clearer, liberated. Contrary to expectation, freedom doesn't manifest in fireworks or champagne or a series of dramatic events. It appears as a peaceful morning devoid of dread, coffee tasting without the flavor of concession, music playing not to mask the silence, but because the silence is no longer daunting. It resembles saying yes once more, to opportunities, to individuals, to living. One casual Sunday afternoon, Noah persuaded me to attend a local art fair. Though it bore little resemblance to my usual milieu, I owed him that much. After all, he had provided me with shelter when mine crumbled. The least I could do was peruse overpriced pottery and artfully dyed scarves. It was there that I encountered Rachel. She wasn't like Amanda in the slightest. Initially, this difference caused me pause. Amanda was polished, precise, controlled. Rachel was disorganized. Her fingers bore ink smudges, she paired socks inconsistently, and her laughter illuminated her entire face. Encountering each other at a stand peddling peculiar watercolor portraits of frogs in tuxedos, she delivered a wit that left me momentarily startled, causing an audible snort from me. We conversed, lasting 4 hours. It wasn't amorous. It wasn't prearranged. Yet it was authentic. She spoke of her occupation teaching 3rd grade, her plant-tending misfortunes, and the time she attempted to repair a sink, ending up flooding the kitchen. I shared about my business, about the vehicle I was renovating, about Max, the dog Amanda abandoned, now accompanying me like an ever-present shade. She inquired, "What's your background?" For the first time, I didn't launch into, "My spouse betrayed me." Instead, I began, "I just emerged from a heavy situation. However, I'm learning how to breathe anew." She nodded as if comprehending. We did not exchange contact information that day. That wasn't the purpose. It was a reminder. The world didn't come to an end. I wasn't condemned. There were still individuals who truthfully navigated their lives. Days yet untouched by treachery awaited me. That evening, I returned home and played my guitar until my fingers throbbed. The melody was far from perfect, but it was mine, created for no one else's approval or admiration, only for my own peace. It was then that I understood the path ahead wasn't paved with retribution, vindication, or making Amanda feel remorse. Instead, it was about constructing something fresh, not to erase the past, but because I no longer needed to bear its weight forward. One more time I visited the house, not for her. She had already departed by then, moving on to another location, another job, another life. I went there for Max, and to retrieve a final box I'd left in the garage, hidden behind an old tarp and a damaged ladder. It was drizzling, a gentle rain that neither hurried nor disturbed, merely reminded me of impermanence. I stood in the driveway for quite some time before I opened the door. The atmosphere changed distinctly. It felt cold and empty. Amanda had departed swiftly. The walls were void of decorations. Furniture was repositioned. No reminders of us remained. No photographs, no sticky notes, not even the scratch on the floor from moving the new couch was visible anymore. It no longer felt like my home. And that's when I realized it never truly belonged to me. I lived there, yes, paid the bills, fixed the gutters, painted the guest room, but I was merely a transient, a stand-in, a regular heartbeat for someone who had no intention of ever settling down. I carried the box out to my truck, secured Max in the passenger seat. He disliked rain, climbed in, and didn't glance back, as there was nothing left to behold. Life didn't fall into place after that. There was no grand finale, no cinematic triumph montage, just a gradual reclaiming of myself. I continued working on the Mustang and completed it the day before Thanksgiving. Took it for a long drive along the old country roads outside town. Wind blowing through my hair, music playing loud, Max leaning out of the car window as if savoring freedom alongside me. By chance or by design, Rachel and I encountered each other at a bookstore this occasion. She was purchasing a children's science kit for one of her pupils. I was simply there for coffee. We conversed, discussed more, and eventually our talk didn't cease. However, this narrative isn't about rekindling love, but rather finding oneself anew. I don't bear ill will towards Amanda, the surprising revelation no one anticipates. Resentment is still a form of bondage. I no longer utter her name or relive the deceit like a perpetual film. Instead, I carry the lessons learned. If someone lies once, observe how they justify it. If they lie twice, notice who they accuse. If they lie thrice, stop observing, start moving on. For years, I tried in vain to repair something that only functioned when I averted my gaze from its flaws. Now, I don't overlook imperfections. Instead, I construct stronger, wiser, and more resilient. If you find yourself pondering while enshrouded in solitude and questioning if the knot within you carries significance, it does. If you persist due to the belief that alterations will alleviate the situation, know that you are not the issue. Love should not instill doubts about your mental faculties. Falsehoods do. The moment you depart, the moment you inhale anew, you'll comprehend what I have. You were never demanding too much. Instead, you asked from an incorrect source. Farewell, Amanda. I am disentangling myself from your narrative. This tale now belongs to me.